Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Friday, June 13, 2025. United Nations Security Council meets on the military exchanges between Israel and Iran. Israel targeting dozens of Iran's nuclear facilities, military sites, and private homes, killing several senior Iranian military commanders and Iranian nuclear scientists. Iran hitting back with over 100 drones, and then, according to Iranian state-run media, hundreds of ballistic missiles against Israeli cities. Iran announcing it's pulling out of nuclear talks with the U.S. The next round was set for this Sunday. President Donald Trump posting 2 months ago, "I gave Iran a 60-day ultimatum to make a deal. They should have done it. Today is day 61. I told them what to do, but they just couldn't get there. Now they have perhaps a second chance." Also today, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a migrant who was deported from Maryland to El Salvador and then brought back after a federal indictment, pleading not guilty today in federal court in Tennessee to human trafficking charges. More Republican governors call up the National Guard ahead of a weekend of expected protests against Trump administration policies. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, a Democrat, talking about the future of his party and young people. And former President Bill Clinton and the House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries give eulogies at a funeral service in New York City for the late Congressman Charlie Rangel. Associated Press reports that Israel launched blistering attacks on the heart of Iran's nuclear and military structure Friday, deploying warplanes and drones previously smuggled into the country to attack key facilities and kill top generals and scientists, a barrage it said was necessary before its adversary got any closer to building an atomic weapon. Iran retaliated by unleashing scores of ballistic missiles on Iran late Friday, with explosions flaring in the skies over Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and shaking buildings below. That was from Associated Press. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu putting out a new video statement.
Tonight I wish to speak to you, the proud people of Iran. We're in the midst of one of the greatest military operations in history, Operation Rising Lion. The Islamic regime, which has oppressed you for nearly 50 years, threatens to destroy my country, the State of Israel. The objective of Israel's military operation is to remove this threat, both the nuclear threat and the ballistic missile threat to Israel. And as we achieve our objectives, we're also clearing the path for you to achieve your objective, which is freedom. In the past 24 hours, we've taken out top military commanders, senior nuclear scientists, the Islamic regime's most significant enrichment facility, and a large portion of its ballistic missile arsenal. More is on the way. The regime doesn't know what hit them. They don't know what will hit them. The nation of Iran and the nation of Israel have been true friends since the days of Cyrus the Great. And the time has come for you to unite around your flag and your historic legacy by standing up for your freedom from an evil and oppressive regime. It has never been weaker. This is your opportunity to stand up and let your voices be heard. Woman, life, freedom. Zan, Zandegi, Azadi. As I said yesterday and many times before, Israel's fight is not with you. It's not with you, the brave people of Iran whom we respect and admire. Our fight is with our common enemy, a murderous regime that both oppresses you and impoverishes you. Brave people of Iran, your light will defeat the darkness. I am with you. The people of Israel are with you.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu with a video statement. Also from Associated Press, Iran's supreme leader vowed revenge for Israeli attacks in a recorded message to the nation delivered as Iranian missiles flew toward Israel. He said, "Don't think that they hit and it's over. No, they started the work and started the war. We will not allow them to escape safely from this great crime they committed." And the United Nations Security Council meeting in New York City at the request of Iran, Iran's ambassador Amir Saeed Iravani addressing them.
Last night, the Israeli regime, the most dangerous and terrorist regime in the world, with full intelligence and political support from the United States regime, conducted a series of coordinated and premeditated military attacks across multiple cities in Iran. These acts of aggression and unlawful strikes target peaceful nuclear facilities, military sites, vital civilian infrastructure, and residential areas. Among the key targets was the Natanz nuclear facility, a safeguarded site under the full monitoring of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Madam President, we strongly and unequivocally condemn the barbaric and criminal attack. A series of targeted assassinations were against senior military officials, nuclear scientists, and innocent civilians. So far, 78 people, including senior military officials, have been martyred and over 320 others injured. The overwhelming majority of them civilians, including women and children. Earlier today, Israel continued its act of aggression against Iran, once again targeting multiple civilian and military sites across several Iranian cities. These deliberate and systematic killings were not only illegal but inhuman, a chilling display of calculated aggression. These atrocities constitute clear act of state terrorism and flagrant violation of international law. Madam President, the inaction of the United Nations, the Security Council, and the IAEA, despite repeated and documented warning by Islamic Republic of Iran regarding Israeli threats against its nuclear sites, have seriously undermined the credibility and authority. Their silence in the face of repeated Israeli provocation has emboldened this rogue regime to escalate its violation and cross every red line.
Amir Saeed Iravani, Iran's ambassador addressing the UN Security Council in New York City. He also said the U.S. shares some of the blame for Israel's actions.
Those who support this regime with the United States at the forefront must understand that they are complicit by aiding and enabling these crimes, by they share full responsibility for the consequences. Supporting Israel today is supporting war crimes, crimes against humanity, and deliberate undermining of global peace and security.
Iranian ambassador to the UN, Amir Saeed Iravani, at the UN Security Council meeting in New York City. Another AP story, the United States is shifting military resources, including ships, in the Middle East in response to Israel's strikes on Iran and the retaliatory attack by Tehran, two U.S. officials said Friday. Representing the United States at the UN Security Council, a State Department official, McCoy Pitt.
Yesterday, Israel took unilateral action against Iran. The Islamic Republic of Iran's regime has, since its founding, repeatedly called for the State of Israel's eradication, launched unprovoked, direct, and proxy attacks on Israeli civilians, and spread terror, instability, and untold human suffering throughout the region. As we speak, Iran is firing missiles at civilian areas across Israel, including in Tel Aviv. As President Trump has repeatedly said, this dangerous regime cannot be allowed to have nuclear weapons. Israel advised us this action was necessary for its self-defense. Every sovereign nation has the right to defend itself, and Israel is no exception. The United States was informed of the strikes ahead of time, but was not militarily involved in these strikes. Our absolute foremost priority is the protection of U.S. citizens, personnel, and forces in the region. As Secretary Rubio said, Iran should not target U.S. interests or personnel. Let me be crystal clear. No government, proxy, or independent actor should target American citizens, American bases, or other American infrastructure in the region. The consequences for Iran would be dire. President Trump was elected with a sweeping mandate from the American people to advance peace and to avoid the grave mistakes of past administrations that led to forever wars. We seek a secure peace. As President Trump said, the violence should come to an end, and Iran should make a deal so that there is, quote, no more death, no more destruction, close quote. The United States will continue to seek a diplomatic resolution that ensures Iran will never acquire a nuclear weapon or pose a threat to stability in the Middle East. Iran's leadership would be wise to negotiate at this time.
McCoy Pitt is a State Department official addressing the United Nations Security Council. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, has not posted on his X account since he wrote last night, "Tonight, Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region." Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut, was interviewed today on MSNBC about the Israeli strikes on Iran before Iran had retaliated.
I think we all really worry about the risk to U.S. forces and U.S. interests. It appears as if this was an attempt by Israel to scuttle Donald Trump's negotiations with Iran. Of course, our preferred pathway here to keep Iran from getting a nuclear weapon is diplomacy. Now, it's nightmarish that we are in this position because under the nuclear deal negotiated by President Obama, we had effectively gotten Iran so that they were at least a year, probably more, away from a nuclear weapon. Now, it is true, Iran, if they chose to get a nuclear weapon, could probably get one within weeks. That's because Donald Trump, pushed by Bibi Netanyahu, pulled out of the nuclear agreement. But Donald Trump was back at the table trying to renegotiate a diplomatic agreement. And this strike by Iran is clearly a stick in the eye for the American president because in addition to striking nuclear facilities and at least one of their top research scientists, reportedly Israel also killed the chief negotiator who was negotiating with the United States of America. And so it's pretty transparent that this was an effort to submarine, to undermine our diplomacy. Iran is weaker than they were, so are their proxies, but they still have significant military power. And there is a risk in the coming weeks that there is going to be a regional war, that the United States may get dragged into it, and that Iran may ultimately target our forces around the region, many of which are not very well protected. And that's something that I think should be on the minds of every American and every American military family right now.
Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut, today on MSNBC. Senator Joni Ernst, Republican of Iowa, was on Fox News.
Where are we really facing Iran with a nuclear program? How close are they? What do we know?
They're very close to a completion of their nuclear program, and this is why Israel felt the need to act. And we stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel. And believe me, President Trump wants peace in the Middle East. He has declared that over and over again. He gave Iran every opportunity to come to the table and negotiate for peaceful settlement. This did not happen. And where are they now? They are still not coming to the table. So Israel will continue with this airstrike. They will continue dismantling Iran's nuclear program. But we also know that they have worked on developing ballistic missiles. Ballistic missiles not just to reach Israel and the surrounding Arab partners, but also ballistic missiles to reach the United States of America. So we need to make sure that the program comes to an end. It can't end peacefully if Iran comes forward and negotiates. But there should be absolutely no enrichment of uranium, period. That is very clear. This administration has said that over and over again.
Senator Joni Ernst, Republican of Iowa, on Fox News. No public statements from President Donald Trump today, but he apparently made a number of phone calls to individual media outlets, a number of them reporting about it. NBC writes, in a phone call with NBC News, President Donald Trump said Iran had missed an opportunity to make a deal. Now they may have another opportunity. We'll see. And from the Wall Street Journal, President Trump told the Journal that he and his team were aware of Israel's plans to attack Iran. Asked what kind of heads up the U.S. got ahead of the attack, Trump said in a brief phone interview on Friday morning, heads up. It wasn't a heads up. It was, we know what's going on. From CNBC, a headline, stocks tumbled Friday after Israel launched a wave of airstrikes on Iran, pushing energy prices higher and adding another complication at a time of heightened geopolitical tensions. And the Dow down 769, NASDAQ down 255, S&P down 68. This is Washington Today. ABC News writes that Kilmar Abrego Garcia pleaded not guilty Friday to human smuggling charges 1 week after he was brought back to the United States from detention in El Salvador. The 29-year-old entered his plea at his arraignment in Tennessee, where federal prosecutors have charged him with transporting undocumented migrants within the U.S. in what they say was a conspiracy involving the domestic transport of thousands of non-citizens from Mexico and Central America, including some children, in exchange for thousands of dollars. That was the ABC News article. There was a rally in support of Abrego Garcia at a church a few blocks from the federal courthouse in Nashville. Vonda McDaniel is president of the Central Labor Council of Nashville and Middle Tennessee.
We are here to demand accountability, to defend the rights of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who will appear in Nashville in federal court today. He has been unfairly charged because this government is determined to cover up its own misconduct, fear, distraction, and scapegoating. Let's talk about the facts for a minute. In March, the federal government admitted to an administrative error that unlawfully deported Kilmar to El Salvador. In April, the United States Supreme Court affirmed a district court ordering compelling Kilmar to return and be treated as if he had never wrongfully been deported. But instead, their mistake, the government, did what it does best. It retaliated. In May, with no public transparency, the federal government went before a grand jury and cooked up an indictment accusing Kilmar of human smuggling over a nearly 10-year period of time. And then, knowing the public perception is a weapon, they added the most damning and inflammatory accusations possible, that Kilmar is associated with the MS-13 despite no credible evidence in the public record. This is a clear attempt to criminalize Kilmar retroactively in order to justify what they did to him illegally, and to intimidate other immigrants, workers, who might dare to fight back when their rights are violated.
Vonda McDaniel, president of the Central Labor Council of Nashville and Middle Tennessee, at a rally at a church a few blocks from the federal courthouse where Kilmar Abrego Garcia pleaded not guilty to human trafficking charges. AP reports that President Donald Trump's administration this week provided deportation officials with personal data, including the immigration status, on millions of Medicaid enrollees, a move that could make it easier to locate people as part of his sweeping immigration crackdown. An internal memo and emails obtained by the Associated Press show that Medicaid officials unsuccessfully sought to block the data transfer, citing legal and ethical concerns. From the New York Times, National Guard troops are set to remain in Los Angeles through a weekend of planned protests as cities across the country prepare for demonstrations against the Trump administration and its efforts to deport immigrants. A federal judge on Thursday blocked the Trump administration's mobilization of the Guard in Los Angeles, but within hours, an appeals court stopped the order from taking effect until at least Tuesday, when a hearing on the matter is scheduled. That means that the National Guard troops can remain on the streets. Hundreds of Marines have also been sent to Los Angeles, and some will take over protecting a federal building on Friday, according to Major General Scott M. Sherman of the U.S. Army, reporting from the New York Times. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, a Republican, also said on Thursday he was ordering the deployment of more than 5,000 Texas National Guard troops, plus another 2,000 state police, to help local law enforcement ahead of potential protests. Governor Abbott was on Fox News on Thursday.
You saw what happened in L.A. There are promises of more protests this weekend as part of what they're calling the No Kings protest. So are you expecting that this will be needed this weekend or in the coming days in Texas?
So, well, what we do know is that there are going to be protests across the entire state of Texas, and the state of Texas is very large. What we hope will occur is what occurred earlier this week, and that is there were protests without any property being damaged or anybody being hurt. And people are free to protest if they don't harm anything. However, because of the possibility, because the size of the crowds could grow large, because things could get out of control, we want to make sure that we have the assets in place where we're going to be able to quickly respond. It does not do any good to have the National Guard not deployed and have a city catch on fire, have crime and chaos break out, and take a day or two to get them there. We will have 5,000 National Guard pre-positioned to make sure that we will be able to respond immediately if crime or chaos or lawlessness does break out.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott, Republican, on Fox News on Thursday. Story from the Kansas City Star. Governor Mike Kehoe, Republican, activated the Missouri National Guard on Thursday, declaring a state of emergency due to civil unrest, even as no evidence existed of riots or other widespread violence in the state. The governor singled out Kansas City, St. Louis, and Springfield, and other, quote, affected communities in Missouri where events were occurring or could occur that create hazards for people and property beyond the resources of local officials. The decision to call up the National Guard came ahead of anticipated widespread national demonstrations on Saturday to protest Donald Trump. On that day, Trump plans to hold a military parade in Washington, D.C. The activation by Kehoe, a former lieutenant governor who cast himself as a champion of law and order, also comes after Trump federalized the California National Guard in response to protests in L.A., and also sent hundreds of Marines into the city, an extraordinary demonstration of power that local officials call provocative. That was the article from the Kansas City Star. Ezra Levin, co-founder of the group Indivisible, is one of the organizers of the No Kings protest this weekend. He was on C-SPAN's Washington Journal this morning.
When we heard that Donald Trump was planning a military birthday parade for himself that would cost $100 million of taxpayer dollars, your money, my money, everybody who's watching, your taxpayer dollars, we were shocked. I mean, that's not the kind of thing we've seen in America. It's the kind of thing you would more likely see in North Korea. And that's really dangerous. What we know from the experts in authoritarianism is would-be authoritarians want to project strength like this. They want to show that they are the supreme leader. And we couldn't let that stand. We didn't want to play into Trump's hands. We didn't want some kind of counter-protest of that parade. We didn't want to give him the narrative device that he could say we're protesting the military. So instead we said, look, Donald Trump can have downtown D.C. for his little birthday parade. We're going to organize peacefully, joyfully, boisterously, and powerfully everywhere else. And on Saturday, there are going to be more than 2,000 locally led, peaceful protest for No Kings Day, not just in the big city centers, but in places like Homer, Alaska, in Winnebago, Wisconsin, in Eureka, Montana, in small towns and cities across the country. People are standing up and saying, we don't do kings in America.
Ezra Levin, co-founder of the group Indivisible, on C-SPAN's Washington Journal Friday morning. President Donald Trump was asked Thursday at the White House about the planned protests on Saturday, same day as the parade to honor the 250th anniversary of the U.S. military.
For Americans that are coming to Washington on Saturday for the military parade,
It's going to be a great day.
what would you like folks to take away from that day? What would you hope that they would remember? And also, Mr.
Great our country is, and how strong our military is. We have the strongest military in the world.
You know, it's very interesting. 3 weeks ago, it was the end of world anniversary, end of World War II. And I called France, and Macron, who's a good man, I said, what are you doing? He goes, we're celebrating World War II, our victory. I said, your victory? Your victory. Tell me about that. And then I called somebody else, and I happened to speak to President Putin at the time. Now, in all fairness to him, he lost 51 million people, and he did fight. Russia fought. Sort of interesting, isn't it? He fought with us in World War II, and everybody hates him. And Germany and Japan, they're fine. You know, someday somebody will explain that, but I like Germany and Japan too. But Putin is a little confused by that, you know. He said, we lost 51 million people, and we were your ally. And now everybody hates Russia, and they love Germany and Japan. I said, let's explain that sometime, okay? But it's a strange world. But I will say this, look, I want them to go away saying how great our country is and how great our military is. And I was making all these calls. For some reason, I spoke to like 4 different places. Sir, are you celebrating? And I said, you know, we won World War II and World War I, right? We won them. And yet we're the only country that doesn't celebrate. Everybody's celebrating except us. And I said, we should celebrate too.
Several No Kings protests planned across the country on Saturday as well. What are your thoughts on those?
What do they call it? No Kings?
No Kings.
I don't feel like a king. I have to go through hell to get stuff approved. A king would say, I'm not going to get this. A king would have never had the California mandate to even be talking to him. He wouldn't have to call up Mike Johnson and Thune and say, fellas, you got to pull this off, and after years we get it done. No, we're not a king. We're not a king at all. Thank you very much.
President Donald Trump at a White House news conference on Thursday. And on Saturday, June 14th, the U.S. Army marks the 250th anniversary of its creation with a parade along Constitution Avenue near the National Mall in Washington, tracing the Army's evolution from the Revolutionary War to modern times and into the future. It'll have Army equipment flyovers and thousands of soldiers in uniforms, past and present. C-SPAN will have live coverage of the parade beginning at 6 p.m. Eastern with a look at Army history, along with sights and sounds from key points around the parade route. Parade itself is set to begin at 6:30 p.m. Eastern and will be followed by an enlistment and re-enlistment ceremony attended by President Trump. And the evening will end with a parachute demonstration by the Army's Golden Knights, along with a concert and fireworks. You can watch it all live Saturday, June 14th, beginning at 6 p.m. Eastern on C-SPAN television and on our free C-SPAN Now mobile app. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Democracy. It isn't just an idea, it's a process shaped by leaders elected to the highest offices and entrusted to a select few with guarding its basic principles. It's where debates unfold, decisions are made, and the nation's course is charted. Democracy in real time. This is your government at work. This is C-SPAN, giving you your democracy unfiltered.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you get your podcasts. Article from CBS News, activist David Hogg is exiting his role as Democratic National Committee vice chair, he said Wednesday, after months of controversy sparked by his plan to back primary challenges against Democrats he claims are asleep at the wheel. Hogg announced he will not run in a planned redo of this year's DNC vice chair elections, shortly after the party voted to void Hogg and Malcolm Kenyatta's victories in the DNC vice chair elections earlier this year. The revote is not related to Hogg's push to primary elected Democrats, but it came after Hogg drew stiff criticism over the plan. That was from CBS News. Today, Governor Tim Walz, Democrat of Minnesota, former vice presidential nominee, was asked about the Democratic Party and young people at a discussion at the Center for American Progress in Washington.
Like, how would you suggest, like, talking to young people to get them back on the things? We saw like a 40-point shift towards Trump. Harrison, you still won by a lot, but
yeah.
How do we, and just voters as a whole, how about you, what's your position on all these different strategies that are being focus grouped and all these other weird strategies that I don't think is going to work, but what is your position?
No,
and do you support the whole idea that we should start, politicians should start cursing, and how do we develop that with professionalism that politicians should have?
Well, it's a great question, and I didn't take it personally on the cursing and stuff. But yeah, that's the thing about, we all know that the catchword, and everybody's been talking about this for a long time, authenticity, being, authentic or whatever. I don't totally dismiss this idea. I think research matters. I think understanding where people are coming from, but I don't think you're going to find a quick answer in that. My son, who, by the way, graduated from high school this last week, so we're super happy. Happy with him. He told me, he said, Dad, a lot of, especially young men, he said, they're not really voting on the policies. They're voting because it's just kind of like fun on the other side. And it's like, and I'm not telling you that we should turn our politics into a circus, but the circus is working a little bit on the other side to a certain degree. We have to have a reason to pull people in. We have to have a reason. And I think the argument I've made is what Donald Trump was so successful as is that he understands in a more impersonal society, a society that's disconnected more than connected by technology. He understood kind of that sense of being part of something. And I always, as a high school coach, I didn't care. I wanted him to play football, but I also did the plays. And we also wanted him to be in concert choir and speech and debate. Anything that kept somebody involved in their community. High schools are a microcosm of what our communities and society look like, and people want to be something. We lost a lot of people. I think a lot of young men in this disconnect or whatever are trying to find a home. Trump gets this. He provides them a uniform, red hat, stuff, flag or whatever, provides them some of the talking points they're on, provides them a mission, provides them a sense that they're being part of something. And that's why I come back to, how do they think that about the Democratic Party? Do they feel like there's a place for that? And so, my political consultant, Gus Walz, tells me, they're movable. History will show us this, though, and I think the data shows us this. They vote a certain way a couple times, it gets a little harder. But his point is right now, you guys have to be a little something. And look, I don't believe doing a Joe Rogan podcast would have won this election. I have said, I think you've got to fill every space, though. I think if you leave the void, they will fill it. And so I think my team booked me with Theo Vaughn this week, and so I'll go talk to him. I don't think you're going to win. It's like going out. Then it's weird if you go with them and you start pretending, hey, and you try and understand what Gen Z language is or whatever. You look stupid and pandering. But I think you go to them and understand, what are we offering you?
Governor Tim Walz, Democrat from Minnesota, former vice presidential nominee in 2024, today at the Center for American Progress. On this same subject, today on Fox Business, an interview with Republican National Committee Youth Advisory Council member Brylan Hollyhand.
Any day the Democrat Party is in disarray is a good day for us. Their party has no leadership right now. Tim Walz and Pete Buttigieg are speaking at every local club that will let them, but combined, neither of them have enough masculinity to even open a pickle jar. So it's a beautiful thing to see. But I'll say that David Hogg was supposed to be the DNC's saving grace. He was supposed to be their secret weapon to win Gen Z, and they kicked him to the curb after 6 months because of DEI requirements that he didn't meet. So I don't think that's a good message to Gen Z, and that's exactly why Gen Z is fleeing the left. They said Gen Z men are lost. We're not lost. We're just left the left because they abandoned us. They called our masculinity toxic. They compared us to Nazis and Hitler Juniors and garbage. And now they're surprised that we're abandoning their party. Don't get surprised and waste your $20 million. We'd love to see you blow that in the wind before the midterms.
Brylan Hollyhand with the Republican National Committee Youth Advisory Council, today on Fox Business. From Yahoo Finance, consumers are starting to feel better about the trajectory of the U.S. economy as President Trump has dialed back some of his most aggressive stances on tariffs, and Americans come to terms with the economic reality that tariffs are here to stay. The latest University of Michigan survey released Friday showed sentiment increased for the first time since December 2024, with the index rising to a reading of 60.5. above the 52.2 seen last month and the 53.6 expected by economists. The increase came after May recorded one of the lowest readings on record.
I'm on the way to heaven, so am I.
A funeral service today for the late Congressman Charlie Rangel, Democrat of New York, at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. WABC TV writes it was the final tribute for the trailblazing Democrat and decorated Korean War veteran who died last month at the age of 94. The mass came a day after Rangel's body lay in state at New York City Hall, an honor bestowed to only a handful of political figures, including U.S. Presidents Abraham Lincoln and Ulysses S. Grant. Rangel served in Congress for nearly 5 decades, becoming a dean of the New York congressional delegation and a founding member of the Congressional Black Caucus, as well as being the first African American to chair the powerful Ways and Means Committee. Before his time on Capitol Hill, he earned a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star for his military service in the Korean War. That was from WABC TV. One of the eulogies came from Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat of New York, the House Minority Leader.
We are here, of course, to celebrate Congressman Rangel's life. What a life that he lived. What a leader, what a legacy. The legendary Lion of Lenox Avenue. America is better off today because of his service. Now, a lot can be said about Charlie Rangel, but let me just briefly make clear one or two things. Charlie Rangel was a good man, a family man, a well-educated man, a well-dressed man, an alpha man, an army man, a community man, a courageous man, a compassionate man, a heroic man, a humorous man, a hard-working man, and above all else, Charlie Rangel was a Harlem man. He was a Harlem man. He loved Harlem.
Congressman Hakeem Jeffries also spoke about the humorous side of the late Congressman Charlie Rangel at today's funeral service in New York City.
Thankful for his advice, his guidance. One of the earliest conversations I had with Charlie Rangel was a new member of Congress. Was on the subject of fundraising, which of course you have to do to continue your public service journey. And it was a conversation related to his annual birthday event, an event that he would hold each and every August at Tavern on the Green. A who's who of people would show up. And as a new member of Congress, I had the opportunity to attend, struck up the courage, and I said to Charlie Rangel, his annual birthday event in August, I said, Mr. Rangel, is today your actual birthday? He said, no, Jeff. Now, Charlie Rangel would often call me Jeff. I believed it was short for Jeffries. But I never confirmed that, because this was Charlie Rangel. And so you go with the flow. He said, no, my birthday is in June. I said, Mr. Rangel, your birthday is in June, but each and every August you have this spectacular birthday event year after year after year. He said, Jeff, my birthday is whenever the hell my fundraiser tells me it is. He was a good man, had a big heart, big personality, got big things done.
House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat of New York. He noted that 20 past and present members of the U.S. House were in attendance, including Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, Democrat of California. Another eulogy to Charlie Rangel was given by former President Bill Clinton, who said that Rangel was one of the most effective members ever to serve in Congress.
When we were working on our first big economic bill, Charlie wanted very much to include the empowerment zones. So did I. I campaigned on it. I didn't know if we'd get it because in the beginning we only had enough money to do 6 in the whole country. But the very first one was in Harlem. And so I signed the bill, and we went to work. And what happened? In just 8 years, unemployment in Harlem went from above 20% to 8%. Thank you, Charlie Rangel. And in so doing, we proved it would work everywhere. If you just gave people the incentive to look at poor neighborhoods and poor people as opportunities and equal citizens, you could get unbelievable results.
Former President Bill Clinton at the funeral of the late Congressman Charlie Rangel, Democrat of New York, today in New York City. There were two more eulogies from Governor Kathy Hochul, a Democrat, who spoke about her testimony in Washington, D.C. on Thursday against Trump administration immigration policies. She said, "I thought of Charlie because I knew I'd be here today, and I said, what would Charlie do? And I just harnessed his cool. Just keep your cool. Don't let them get to you. Don't get under your skin." And a fourth eulogy from Senator Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, the minority leader, who said from the streets of Harlem to the halls of Congress to the West Wing of the White House, Charlie used that unique voice of his to speak for others. C-SPAN covered the entire funeral from St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. You can find it at cspan.org, our video library. And thank you for listening to Washington Today. Sign up for C-SPAN's evening newsletter word for word and get the stories making headlines in Washington sent to your inbox. Subscribe at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night and weekend.